Hi, it's Saturday and time to look back at what happened at Queen's Park and Ontario politics this week. The legislature was in recess for a constituency week. Election ads started flowing from the PCs and the NDP, so effectively the Ontario election campaign has started. And we're still waiting for progress on the optometrists' dispute with the government about OHIP reimbursement rates, and we're waiting for a childcare agreement between Ontario and the federal government, which is offering funding. This week, vaccine certificates could be downloaded. I downloaded mine. And the Ontario Science Table reported on healthcare worker burnout. The government of Ontario announces some money for more nursing students. And the Capital Markets Act, a technical piece of legislation, was published. It's just a draft piece of legislation, not so political, but important to the economy in the long term. Please keep watching to find out more. Otherwise, please join me next week as I look back at what happened at Queen's Park. So vaccine certificates can be downloaded. As I mentioned, I downloaded mine, and I also downloaded the app that businesses will be using to read these vaccination certificates, and sure enough, it works. It produces my name and birth date, and then says to check my ID to make sure I am really who I am. There was controversy this past week over increasing capacity at stadiums, concert halls, and theaters. That's something that the government did last week, but did not increase capacity at restaurants, bars, and gyms, the smaller venues. And this is expected to be addressed soon. The Ontario Science Table put out a report a little over a week ago about healthcare worker burnout. It reported over 60% rates of burnout in Canadian healthcare workers in the spring of 2021. And here's a direct quote, nurses and younger healthcare professionals or trainees have been at a greater risk of burnout. The report recommended interventions, so improvements in leadership, working conditions and pay, training for better confidence, and emotional and moral support. To be fair to Premier Ford's government, the Minister of Colleges and Universities was in Kingston this past week to announce almost $1 million in funding to St. Lawrence College to increase the number of nursing students that they can handle by about 100, and this is across the province. Of course, this doesn't address short-term issues mentioned in the science table, which will need to be addressed and cannot simply be addressed by increasing the number of incoming students. A draft piece of legislation, the Capital Markets Act, was published and put out for public comment. This was in response to a task force, a capital modernization task force, which completed its work almost a year ago. The main idea in this piece of legislation is to move away from putting all the securities rules in law, which is cumbersome to change if there's a problem, and instead replace it by rules set and updated by the regulator under a framework set up by the law. That is much more nimble. This is one of those technical pieces of legislation which probably won't get much partisan scrutiny. It's like a 1,000-page bill in the federal House of Commons that didn't even get debated. That rule was a very technical bill. What happened was they took all the tax rulings and they put it into law. We rely very much on the quality of public service and on civil society organizations looking at this kind of legislation, technical legislation, with their expertise to make sure that everything's okay. Comments are open on the Capital Markets Act until January the 21st, 2022. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Otherwise, please join me next week as I look back again at what happened at Queen's Park.